What if your anger is not actually about what you think it is? What if anger is not the real emotion, but the protector of something much more vulnerable underneath? Today, I want to talk about what your anger might really be trying to tell you, because I think a lot of us carry shame around anger, honestly, myself included. First, I want to say this clearly: anger is a completely normal human emotion. Having anger does not make you a bad person. It does not make you toxic. It doesn't mean there is something wrong with you. But what does matter is what we do with our anger. And I also want to gently say this up front. Understanding your anger is not the same thing as excusing harmful behavior. If anger is damaging your relationships, there still needs to be accountability, repair, and change. The goal here is not to justify anger. Your anger or being triggered is an opportunity to get curious. The goal is to understand so deeply that you can finally heal what is underneath it. So let's talk about what anger actually is. Anger can absolutely be a primary emotion, especially when there's a real threat, injustice, or boundary violation. But often anger acts like a bodyguard. It protects us from emotions that feel much harder to sit with. Things like sadness, fear, rejection, shame, grief, disappointment, helplessness, because vulnerability can feel terrifying. Anger gives us energy, it gives us protection. It helps us feel powerful when underneath we may actually feel deeply hurt. As someone healing fearful avoidant attachment myself, this was honestly a huge realization for me. Fearful avoidants often experience anger more intensely or more frequently, and one reason for that is because one of the deepest wounds underneath fearful avoidant attachment is the fear of being hurt. Let's unpack that. Maybe as a child, you grew up in an environment where expressing emotions did not feel safe. Maybe when you cried, you were told you were too sensitive. Maybe when you spoke up, you were dismissed. Maybe expressing your needs led to consequences, criticism, rejection, or conflict. So, what happens? You learn to suppress vulnerable emotions because they do not feel safe. And eventually, those feelings can come out sideways. Sadness becomes anger, fear becomes defensiveness, hurt becomes irritation, vulnerability becomes shutdown or rage. Let me give you an example. Imagine a parent says something that deeply hurts your feelings as a child. Maybe you feel sad. Maybe you cry. But instead of comfort, you are met with shame. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. I will give you something to cry about. Over time, your nervous system learns that sadness is not safe. So instead of sadness, anger becomes the safer emotion. Or maybe you grew up feeling unseen or unheard. You didn't have a voice. You learned that speaking calmly did not work. So now, as an adult, maybe you raise your voice because somewhere deep down there is a younger version of you saying, "Please hear me." And that is the thing. Anger is often trying to tell us something important. Sometimes anger says, "My needs are not being met. I don't feel safe. I feel abandoned. I feel disrespected. My boundaries were violated. I don't feel seen. I feel overwhelmed. Or honestly, I'm exhausted." Sometimes anger is actually information. If someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, anger may be telling you, "Hey, something is not okay here." Or maybe your anger is actually anxiety. Let's say your kids are running through a parking lot. You may yell because underneath the anger is fear. Fear that something terrible could happen. That doesn't mean that screaming is helpful, but understanding the feeling underneath gives us compassion and accountability. And this is important. Healing anger does not mean pretending it doesn't exist. It means learning to pause long enough to ask, what am I really feeling right now? And when we do hurt someone, repair matters. I truly think one of the hardest things to say in relationships is not "I love you." It's "I'm sorry." A real apology, taking accountability, and then changing behavior. Also, don't underestimate how much your basic needs affect anger. Sometimes the answer is deeper healing, and sometimes you're hangry. Low blood sugar, poor sleep, dehydration, nervous system overload, lack of movement, chronic stress. We are biological humans, not robots. And when our nervous system is dysregulated, irritability goes way up. So if you struggle with anger, I want you to hear this. Your anger is not the enemy. Your anger is information. It may be pointing toward a wound, a need, a fear, a boundary, or a younger version of you that never felt safe enough to feel what they actually felt. The work is not to shame yourself for anger. The work is to get curious, to slow down enough to ask, what is my anger trying to protect me from? And if you ever had one of those moments where you completely overreacted, had an angry outburst, or got really emotionally activated, and afterward thought, whoa, where did that come from? I want you to know there is usually a deeper reason. Most emotionally charged reactions are not actually just about the moment happening in front of us. They are often tapping into something much older, a deeper wound, unmet need, or fear underneath the surface. Make sure to subscribe because coming up, I am actually going to walk you through how to uncover the core wound underneath an emotional trigger or anger response. Because once you understand the deeper story, healing becomes so much easier. Because underneath anger, there's usually something that needs healing.